things as sort of simple as your average, and I mean average, Republican kind of entering the race, or a quote from Lindsey Graham, saying that his solution to anything that happens on a foreign level is going to be a show of military strength. All of these kind of just standardized Republican politics, which have increasingly over the last couple of cycles gotten more Tea Party-ish, more extreme, goofier, quite frankly. And I really think that the introduction of Donald Trump as a leader in the field, as a de facto frontrunner in the Republican Party, is exemplary on so many levels of exactly who they are today. And I don't mean this, the sideline crisscross of that Santorum presented us with, the perfect storm that is Paul Ryan of devout Catholicism and Ayn Rand political and economic philosophy, which creates a scotoma in the brain that is almost unfathomable. That if you are capable of housing those two thoughts at the same time, you clearly are mad on some level. That seems normal by comparison. That seems almost like we're hearkening back to the day of, remember when we used to get all upset about people like Paul Ryan saying things like he said? And then the gift that keeps on giving, the person that may be responsible for Jon Stewart extending his tenure at The Daily Show, the man who's, I think, the only candidate whose hair could run as his own vice president, Donald Trump steps in and announces that he's running for president with extras. The man has extras. He has hired background performers to fill out the crowd. He, after his announcement, goes on an extemporaneous word salad tossing experiment that had to have had Sarah Palin sitting at home going, they were up my keister about this stuff. They were bugging me about this. Where he effectively called Mexican immigrants, the majority of Mexican immigrants, rapists and murderers and drug dealers. I guess including the ones who are building his buildings. And that didn't, obviously go too well as far as messaging with that community. But as far as Donald Trump is concerned, that's gone perfectly well. That this amount of press, there is an element of, and I do not want to tarnish the name of Gene Simmons of KISS with this, but there's an element of salesmanship that would make Gene blush in Donald Trump. The concept of, there's no such thing as bad press. Donald Trump has now carried that to the extreme that there is no such thing as a bad economic response to something he said. There is no such thing as a bad consequence, because consequences get reported on, and the consequences themselves can lead to more attention. And isn't what this is on the GOP side? Isn't that what this is all about? Isn't it now that the Republican presidential race is about attention? It's not about leadership. It's not about running an actual country. It's about attention. Because even in the case where they become president, where a Republican becomes president, what they seek and benefit from is the attention of the people and corporations that they value the most. And so over the course of their entire presidential campaign, they seek the attention of a particular set of people and court them with the guarantee that their needs will be met while they are in office. It used to be as simple as just running on an evangelical platform and guaranteeing yourself that vote and then basically giving lip service to it over the course of your presidency to guarantee that vote again and for the person who followed you. But now the process starts during the run, ends in book sales, speech money, or a Fox News job, effectively has become a hyper-branding narrow field where the Republicans are now the microbrew of politics, that they have recognized that you can make an incredibly comfortable living off of an increasingly narrow group of people. That thanks to President Obama, everybody, even people that Obama's not a fan of, are doing better. I mean, that's Randy Rhoads has said many times, the most frustrating thing when you're dealing with Republicans is arguing for their benefit but against their ideas. Like, dude, I'm trying to help you out too. If you would just, because we all breathe this air, we all drink this water, we all benefit from this economy, we all provide goods and services. We need more people who could afford those goods and services. So if you could cool off for a second, recognize that, yeah, you might lose 15% of what you're currently making by my proposals, but you'll make 35% more because you'll have more customers, which is the quiet, tacit understanding of how Obamacare is affecting the economy. Insurance companies lost 15 to 20% of the money they were making when they were running pre-Obamacare. And now they are making 40 to 60% more in some cases off of the fact that they have all the new customers and all the new bases, and it's their payouts are over a broader, healthier field. So you're arguing to help a Republican in life while you're, and you're not trying to deny them their rights to do this. We'll talk about religious freedom laws in just a moment. And is Johnny with us this morning, by the way?
We have no Johnny Millions.
Oh, okay. He might not. I wasn't sure. It was incredibly silent. I was expecting kind of a breaking of wind or something in the middle of this. 'Cause I was getting too serious too early. That was my bad. I apologize. We are streaming, by the way, on YouTube. The show today is One Trump to Rule Them All. And I will share that link on my Twitter, which is @HalSparks. You can join us both in the chat room on the YouTube. And, of course, if you want to be involved in the conversation via Twitter, you can hashtag it HSRPM. Katie Speak will be joining us to talk about one of the sideline benefits of Obamacare that got fought pretty heavily in the beginning, but is actually finding many victories and may end up undoing a lot of the anti-abortion laws across this country that are in violation of Roe v. Wade. Fingers crossed. That's a big conversation. We're going to have that. When we come back, we're going to do the top 10 quotes, my favorite quotes, from Donald Trump's both announcement and the following freak out. We'll be back.
I got a good one too. I'm going to play when we go to break. So yeah,
excellent.
That's a good one.
It's the HalSparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
And which Republican candidate has the best chance of winning the general election?
Of the declared ones, right now, Donald Trump.
In my role as sales manager at WCPT, I meet lots of people from all walks of life. Not all of them are political critters like me, so I'm often asked, what's a progressive? My answer is simple. A progressive is a person who is okay with the concepts of caring and sharing. We care about people and our planet, and we're willing to share some of our good fortune with those who need a hand. I'm Mark Ernest, and I want to thank you for being part of our community.
Life can hit you with the unexpected. The loss of a job, a sudden illness, a dramatic jump in your mortgage payment, leaving you feeling helpless, forcing you to make difficult decisions. If you've fallen behind on your mortgage, are worried about financial problems, or are afraid of foreclosure, it's time to take control. You don't have to lose your home. The National Foundation for Credit Counseling can help. Seek advice from our certified housing counselors today. Call us at 866-687-6322 or visit mortgagehelpnow.org.
Looks like we
the
got one
National
call in line.
Foundation for Credit Counseling. Real solutions for real people.
The National Foundation for Credit Counseling is a nonprofit organization that has been providing financial counseling and education for 60 years. Our national network of member agencies have helped millions of consumers with foreclosure prevention. NFCC member agencies are approved by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
If you're struggling to pay or haven't
Donald
been making
Trump
your
told
student
NBC
loan
News
payments,
today that he's going
listen
to win the
carefully to this
Latino vote.
urgent alert.
That was just
Have you
one
been
of
out of
several
school for
combative
10
things
or
he
more
said in his
years
interview
and
with
you're
Katie
still
Tur
making
as
your
he
student
defended
loan
comments
payments?
he made about
Are your
immigrants.
student loans
Take a look.
past due or even in default? Can't go back to school because of an old student loan problem? We can help you if you qualify. Your student loans can be taken out of default. We can stop the wage garnishments, stop the collection calls, and stop the seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and see if we can help you reduce your student loan payments. One quick 10-minute call could solve them right now. So call the Student Loan Helpline now. 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395. This is a fee-based document preparation service to help you access free government programs. Call for complete details, not available in all states.
This is Tom Hartman, and you're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, mega worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
Welcome back to the show. So I have a theory that as a huge fan of Douglas Adams, and if you're not familiar, he wrote The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Douglas Adams had a character in there, if you saw the movie or if you read the books, and his name is Zaphod Beeblebrox, and he's the president of the galaxy. And at one point, he steals the fastest ship in the universe. And it runs on an infinite improbability drive, which means it's effectively, the ship is insane. It's a crazy ship. So, and to run the crazy ship is an egomaniacal freak with two heads who just thinks the sun shines out of his backside. And I think to some degree, Trump is a Douglas Adams fan using The Secret. I think that's what happened. Like, they focused so hard on it that they were like, I wish Zaphod Beeblebrox was our president. That would be hilarious. And here we get Donald Trump. He doesn't have two heads, but I think the hair qualifies. I have to say that if somebody at College Humor or at Funny or Die is not working on a Trump, Rand Paul hair debate, they need to start right away. It'd be the easiest puppet show you could do, and if they don't do it, I'll do it. But, free idea. There you have it. At one point, Donald Trump did an interview this week with Katie Tur, and there was a moment, I don't know if many people remember, one of the reasons why we love David Letterman was because David Letterman, when Bush was on his show, pre-2001, when he was running against Gore, I guess a support person on his team came out, a woman. She was talking to David and talking to other people of the team, talking about what questions he was on for 2 segments. In the break in between the segments, Bush cleaned his glasses on her dress, reached out and grabbed her jacket and just cleaned his jacket. Didn't ask, didn't say anything, just used her clothing to clean his glasses. And Letterman showed that clip. He's like, usually I don't show stuff that happens during the break, but this creeped me the hell out. So I think you need to see it. And he showed it because he was not a fan of Bush, and he was like, this is exemplary of who this human being is. And his contempt and kind of just, the fact that she was a woman, the fact that he just, it had this condescending, ownership aspect of it that was just creepy. So flash forward to, the Chris Christies and the Trumps of the world, and treating everybody like crap is just kind of the modus operandi. So you can't even notice when they're particularly egregious, when they really show off the fact that they're sexist or misogynistic or racist or bigoted in any form, because quite frankly, they're so rude to everybody. It kind of lays ground cover. It's not that, I'm that way with everybody. It's I'm that way with everybody, so you can't see the difference between the people I'm really doing it to. The people the people I'm only joking with, they can come into the country club. So anyways, he's doing an interview with Katie Tur this week, and here's a clip from that.
I was so misquoted that it's incredible. I'm talking about the Mexican government forces many bad people into our country, and they are drug dealers and they are criminals of all kind. If I didn't bring it up, you wouldn't even be talking about immigration right now. I'm the most popular person in Arizona because of my stance. We don't even have a border. People are just flowing through like water. Don't try and convince me that there's no crime, that it's wonderful. Sounds good. It's a wrong statistic. Check your numbers. If I get the nomination, I'll win the Latino vote. You're going to mention the ones that do like Trump? Yeah, I'm losing some contracts. Who cares? People politically, they're weak and they want to be politically correct. While I'm wasting my time talking to you, which is, essentially one-sided, but that's fine. But while I'm wasting time, I'll be doing deals on other things. And so I'm losing out on hundreds of millions of dollars.
The interesting part of this is that that would be a joke candidacy. There's a point where the spoofs of Sarah Palin were just essentially Tina Fey was just actually doing Sarah Palin quotes at one point. That's where we are with Donald Trump as well. The aspect of, and this is why he's the perfect Republican candidate, and we'll take your call, 773-763-9278, is that he is dismissive of facts that he finds inconvenient in any way. He is completely arrogant in his expression of his own success. It is, if you listen to him, there is no one else involved. And he uses cartoon words. The hyperbole is not even on the sort of the damaging level that you get from, the Huckabees of the world, where they're trying to use religion as a way to cut against the ethics or character of another opponent, or trying to cut down Hillary on some belief they have about her behavior around Benghazi that's been disproven dozens of times, but they still stick to it, and they kind of use a series of loosely knit circumstances to make one giant fact out of it that is really a conclusion they made up, but is a clever tool for the dissection of another person's character and the tapping down of their numbers. Trump doesn't even do that. He just says, she's terrible on this. She's weak on immigration. Nobody's stronger on immigration than I am. Everybody is, whatever the subject matter is, he's the best on it, and they're weak or terrible on it. This is the language. That's it. It's grandiose. Here's some quotes from him. This is from Bloomberg's list. On campaigning, he said, "Nobody gets as many standing ovations as me." Okay, that's fine. Probably not paying for chairs at his events. That's just his way of doing it. I get the biggest crowds, I get the biggest standing ovations, and I guess you see it in the poll numbers, and I don't even care about it. On immigration, he says, "In some ways, I'm the most popular person in Arizona because of my stance. We don't even," you just heard the quote, "we don't even have a border. People are just flowing through like water," which is amazing. You wouldn't even be hearing about the word immigration if it wasn't for Donald Trump. Illegal immigration is a word. I brought the whole subject up. Okay, first of all, illegal immigration is 2 words. Immigration has been a major part of this campaign since it started to tee up. If anything, the inclusion of Marco Rubio in the field of Republican candidates and both the president's executive orders and Hillary Clinton's stance on immigration have driven it to the front of the line. This is, besides the kind of fear rhetoric that's kind of always been there, the reason it's got shoved front and center are those main aspects. This is Trump on his success. I went to the best school, got the best, great marks, everything else. I went out, I made a fortune, a big fortune, tremendous fortune. It just gets bigger the more he talks about it. I'll be announcing that in about a week because I have to file my papers. Bigger than people even understand. I have a book called The Art of the Deal. I do The Apprentice. The Art of the Deal was like #1 business book of all time. I think it was. Now, again, remember what I said about attention? He's selling books. There's no downside to this. Every person who's saying they would vote for Trump right now, if they don't already own The Art of the Deal, bought a copy. And if they're at some point in his campaign, he's going to be gifting books to get that to happen. We'll be taking your calls after the next break, 773-763-9278. He talks, in talking about Mexican workers that work for him, Mexican-born workers, he goes, they love me, I love them, which sounds exactly like Mel Brooks in The History of the World as the king. When he's told that the peasants are rioting, he's like, but they are my people. I am their sovereign. I love them. Pull! And then they eject a peasant out of a thing, and he shoots it with a shotgun. Shoots the person with a shotgun. And on Hillary Clinton, this is what he says. Hillary would let everybody come in, killers, criminals, drug dealers. Hillary Clinton was the worst Secretary of State in the history of the United States. This is... And if you ask him why, he'll just say, well, it's self-evident. You're very naive if you think that she isn't. That's it. Where do you think Donald Trump is during his actual negotiations in business these days? Do you think he's involved? Do you think he has an army of lawyers who actually speak for him? Because at a certain point, he's using the word fabulous as a point of deal-making that... and language in general that does not show up in contracts. None of this is, I'm a huge success and I do a great deal and we're doing great deals. Well, that's fine. But where does that end up in the actual deal itself? Where does that show up? Where does that language show up? It doesn't. Let's really nail them. Let's bring this deal in. Let's get some extra points for us. See what you can get on that, and then we'll. If they're not going to do that, then we're out. Okay, that's the language Donald Trump uses when he makes a deal these days. And the people who are in charge of it, people who are actually...
Tune in to Ring of Fire.
This election in the Republican Party is impacting our politics. Part of the reason is, in the past, we didn't have that many sitting senators running for president. This year around, we have multiple members of the Senate and the Republican side running for the presidency, not to mention that the Republicans control the Senate and the House.
Ring of Fire, Sunday night from 6 to 9 on Chicago's Progressive Talk, AM and FM.
Shimmy Braun, out Chicago's mortgage and finance expert.
I got an email from someone that said...
There you go. How many?
3 calls. Sorry about that, man.
Excellent. No problem. It's all right. It's cool. So, hi, chat room. How you guys doing? This is officially the longest my beard has ever been in my life. If you're wondering, I've never grown more than this. So, let me know what you think. Hola. Nice. Thanks, Adil. Man bun. I thought man buns were officially out. Like, it just took, like, it was this, you know.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
P.S. While all this nonsense is flowing out of the mouth of Donald Trump like magma towards a picnic, Tiarino, I guess he writes for Politico, had a meeting with him where he brought some dreamers. And he brought some immigration activists to meet with Trump. This is from an article entitled "Donald Trump Lied to Us." He had Estuardo Rodriguez, Gabby Pacheco, and some dreamers come, and they showed up. It freaked out some of his Trump's handlers. Said we were met with bewildered and not so happy faces at the top floor of Trump Tower, but to his credit, Trump waved off his concerned staff and graciously got up from his desk, welcomed us individually. I think the bar is set fairly low that he got up from his desk. Welcomed us individually, proceeded to have a civil dialogue about immigration reform and the important role immigrants have historically played in the United States. For an hour, Trump listened intently, asked thoughtful questions, gave us examples of Latino employees he held in high regard. He then asked each of the dreamers to describe their journeys, which were compelling and mirrored each value of each American shares: education, work ethic, community, faith, and family. After I summed up the conversation with immigrants are a value proposition to America, he stood up, waved his hands in dramatic Donald Trump fashion, and exclaimed, "You've convinced me." It was a great moment, but that's what entertainers do. They know their audience, and they give them what they want. This is the same guy, by the way, who they're murderers, they're rapists, and some of them, I'm sure, are nice people. This is indicative. There is an inversion of that goes on in the rest of the Republican Party, where they, in contrast, where Trump will meet with people that, in general, in that circumstance, he will see it through, although I'm sure he sticks largely to true believers most of the time. In that circumstance, he'll let the man have a meeting with them and can perform in a way that doesn't give him too much foot and mouth disease, because he kind of doesn't care. Rick Santorum and others like that, their issue ends up being is that they're so busy preaching to the choir, and that choir contains so many hateful people that they almost use the N-word in a political expression, as Santorum did, because it becomes comfortable in their space. Since Trump is always performing, even when his performances get a bad review, in the case of what he said, and that's how he takes it, by the way. He takes criticism of of a policy statement that he is making as a presidential candidate, as that joke didn't fly kind of an attitude. Let's take your call, 773-763-9278. Who do we have, Dennis?
Looks like we got a first-time caller here, I believe, on the Hal Sparks show. It's Rick in Wilmette.
Right on. Hey, Rick. How are you?
Hi, Hal. Let me take you off speaker.
Okay, please.
Actually, my comment, I think, is about Donald Trump, his whole presentation, and it follows on what you just said. I just have this feeling that Donald Trump sets himself up sort of with the tacit approval of the party, even though they publicly object, sets himself up to present all of the memes against all of the any potential.
He's teeing up all the worst things you'd want to say about them, so that it gives everybody else cover.
Not only does it give everybody else cover, it satisfies the most extreme portions of the base, of the Republican base, and all of the other candidates can then contrast themselves to him. He's already set himself up as a buffoon and so extremely right wing that nobody even close to the middle would vote for him.
Right. Well, I think you're right.
And so that makes the other candidates more appealing. Other Republican candidates more appealing.
Yeah, I think you're right in mechanic. I think the only problem is I think the reins are coming off. And that's why, Reince Priebus called him up and went, hey, knock it off on immigration. We're literally seeing the numbers tick down as you speak. And for the whole party, please stop. And Trump said that call was a congratulatory call. There's he did. He said they were calling to congratulate me on my success.
Yes, I heard that.
I think you're right. I think some of them the smarter politicians among them, may look at that as a potential, and Jeb Bush is one of them. Jeb Bush is the one who will benefit the most from the rhetoric coming from Trump. The problem is Trump can actually beat him in key primary areas. He can actually, he's got momentum right now, and he's saying things that in the past would have eliminated the momentum of a candidate. You know what I mean? He's saying the kind of things like, well, that did it. He was the front runner, and then he said that. It's the kind of a legitimate rape stance that the Republicans took at one point. Like the minute they said that, off it goes. But now that's his launch point. So I appreciate the call. Who else do we got, Dennis? That's cool, though. We have a first-time call. And from Winnetka, where I went to high school. There you go.
Hey, what do you know? David in San Francisco.
Hey, David, how are you?
Oh, howdy, Hal. Hey, I was feeling Sherlock Holmesian today, and I'm trying to figure out what happened on Wall Street the other day. You remember the great big glitch
around the world? Yeah.
Yeah. Now, there are two different things, two completely different scenarios, and I'm going to test them both on you. First one, if you've ever seen that...
Let me catch everybody up just so we have a point that everybody said. Like, basically Wednesday morning, the New York Stock Exchange had to be halted for a good 6 hours. Because they said there was a glitch software that they use for all their for trading. It's also a form of software, and I haven't heard which company it is that United Airlines also uses to track their flights. It's a coordinating piece of software. It went down as well. And one other business.
Hey, Dave, man, do you have your radio on it by any chance?
In the other room, but not here.
Okay.
Let me see if the speakerphone's on.
Okay, good. You're getting that echo, man.
No, the speakerphone's off. Yeah.
It might be. If you're watching on YouTube, it could be that too, because there's a delay in that.
Yeah. No, I'm in the other room. Yeah. So the two scenarios. Yeah. If you've ever seen, there was a movie 30 years ago called The Sting. It was a Robert Redford, Paul Newman movie. Yeah. And so if you remember the scenario of that, they were pretending that a horse race was happening in real time, but in fact it had happened 5 minutes earlier or something like that, right? And so they were trying to rip off the house, the bookie command center, by running this fake race like this. And so I'm wondering whether or not that's what happened on Wall Street. They were able to pretend they did a time shift, and by doing put options, that you'd be able to, make a killing on those brief seconds or a certain amount of time that you were able to pretend was or wasn't there. So that was the first thing I thought of. But the other one, about 2 weeks ago, the Saudi Arabians created their own Wall Street. Well, you look in the last couple of weeks, there have been some massive collapses. Like China has lost like 5% of their value.
They've been losing 5 to 8% a day for almost 5 days in a row. And what was your second theory? Let me hear your second theory, and then I'll give you mine.
Well, whether or not the Saudis, the Saudis are they're known pirates, crooks, thieves. They've been ripping everybody off. Everybody hates the Saudis.
Most people in the Middle East view the Saudi royal family as the Beverly Hillbillies of the Middle East, that they're...
No, worse, far worse, more corrupt.
Right, but what I mean is they view them as backwards in many ways, especially Iran, by the way. One of the reasons why we chase Iran around the way we do is not just this fear of, an attack on Israel and the like, but because the Saudi royal family knows that a strong Iran is bad for business for them, and they've been our tacit ally in this. Here's my theory on the New York Stock Exchange glitch. I think it was a safety measure against a Chinese run. I think they were concerned that through how interfolded all the stock exchanges are in the world, that a bleed over of, okay, if so many people have Chinese stocks, also have the same people that are holding stocks in the Chinese stock market have held or do hold stocks in the American stock market for a very long time, that they were in that first, and that they're now just putting their foot into the Chinese market. When they started pulling out of the Chinese market to protect the fact that they lost money, many of them were going to pull money out of the American system. So they shut that window for a short time to protect themselves. That's my theory, is that it was effectively like shutting the banks before a run, both due to Greece, both that and as far as the Saudis, they have $1 trillion in our stock market, $1 trillion with a TR. If they took it all out in a day, it wouldn't scratch their personal wealth experience in life, but it would capsize our economy. That's why George Bush kissed them on the mouth. That's a big reason. And it's also why we're trying to normalize relations with Iran. Because that's one of our ways out of this, out of our permanent relationship with the Saudis on an economic stance. We'll be back with more of your calls, 773-763-9278.
Just two more calls.
Two more? Okay, cool. Perfect.
Yep.
My girl sending me her heartbeat. That's sweet. How's this volume-wise? Good, everybody?
Sounds good over here.
Cool. Hey, thanks, Charles. It's my, this is my Blackadder beard.
That's funny, man. Right when you said that, I went to the chat and I saw the goatee.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's full. It's kind of connected on the cheek, so it's more than just a goat. It's actually, that's the thing. So it's the first time I have.
This is Tom Hartman, and you're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
Welcome back to the show. 773-763-9278 is our number. We were just discussing my my beard and stubble on during the chat. I mean, you're an old hand at growing this stuff out, Dennis. Yours looks solid. I have never.
Yeah.
I've never
I need
grown
mine.
mine
I'm bald.
Oh, that's right. You're just drawing attention away.
You know, I just look like a giant baby if I don't. No, you're looking tough, man.
It's interesting. It makes me look like a cop or something, or like I teach paramilitary studies. It's weird.
I'm a bit threatened.
Yeah. Who else do we have on the line?
Let's go to Joe in Chicago.
Cool. Hey, Joe. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Hal. Thanks for letting me speak.
Absolutely.
First of all, let me start off with saying I think you are one of the great, smart, progressive people on radio.
Well, thank you.
But that being said, I would like to see us on the left, on the radio, stop talking about the foibles of the Republicans. We all know what their problems are. We all know they're crazy. I think you need to concentrate on getting the messages out that the Democratic progressive wing of the Democratic Party needs to put out about income equality, put out the facts, so that people like me have things to say to the wackos that we know. Talking about Donald Trump interminably is not going to help. I will tell you what people on the right want to know, and I'm an engager. I'm someone who engages people. I don't just go, oh, well, I'm not going to talk to them because they don't agree with me.
Sure.
What their biggest problem with the Democratic Party is, and with the Democratic agenda, the progressive agenda, is how are we going to pay for it? And we need to get better facts, more elaborate, not elaborate, maybe that's the problem, is the facts are too elaborate and too complicated. But we need to get out the message that these things can be done in a rational manner with certain changes, defense spending, etc. But to constantly just, I
understand what you're saying. To keep in mind, this is I think the only real show I've done about Trump, and the main reason is that he's the front runner. Part of this is in contrast to what the reality of governing versus not governing, which is the message that I put forward on the show regularly, and the importance of voting as a management of reality, as opposed to this kind of idea that it's a team sport.
I certainly agree with that.
Yeah, and so
but to devote, to every, and I have to also say that I get the feeling, and you're not really one of these, but a great many of the left-wing talk show hosts, all they want to hear is cheerleading. They want somebody to say, yeah, you're right, Tom, you're right, Jeff, you're right, Randy, whoever they're talking to, about how bad this is and how great we are. That doesn't prove anything, and that doesn't help the discussion. We need some facts and some intelligent discussion of the issues. The American people don't know anything, frankly. This whole last conversation, as a somewhat, I consider myself but I'm not even a big brilliant authority. But the misinformation that was out there about the Confederate flag, and flags, and about the beginnings of the Civil War and about slavery, both from the right and the left in this past couple of weeks, is just been appalling. And anybody that has knowledge of the Civil War, serious knowledge, would agree with that. And of course, most people don't. They've had things on television where they've met young people on the street and said, "Who won the Civil War?" and they don't know. So, I mean, it's just we got to start giving out the facts instead of playing reality TV and sensationalism.
Well, I think there's I think
point.
most of the conversation about the Civil War has fallen into reality TV zones. That it's effectively like if you asked who won the Civil War on an economic level, you'd say the North, and if you'd say who won it on a social level, you'd say Duck Dynasty and Honey Boo Boo. There's an element of the victory of the Civil War on a Southern level was the elimination of what I would call the Southern gentleman as an existence and an economic and political force. That the permanent dumbing down of the white class in the South as well as everyone else was one of the victories of the Civil War, unfortunately. Asking people,
they certainly haven't made total progress down there as we have not made in the North. But
it's off the charts. It's off the charts in a difference. Like the shoulder to shoulder living, and there's a huge difference in just in the arc of cities and human beings getting along. I grew up in Kentucky. I moved to Chicago. I've been in every major and most minor cities in this country over the course of the last 25 years as a touring comedian. I've seen a lot of this stuff up front. I've done a movie in Cullman, Alabama, which has more churches than Vatican City. And
Vatican City isn't very large.
No, it isn't, but it's mostly churches. The point is, Cullman, Alabama has more churches than any other city in the entire world. And they're across the street from each other, and they're separated by who allows black people and who doesn't, who did first, who let them in second, class and economic status. You can almost go down the row. It's like a game of Christian Monopoly. And that's indicative of where...
There's a lot of truth to that in the North also?
No, not on that level. Not anywhere close. You have sections...
I don't mean to defend the South, but I would just have to say things not as bad as they were in 1858.
Well, of course not. No, not by any stretch of the imagination. And I think that's actually why you're seeing the dust up you're seeing now. Because it used to be that people who held those kind of racist beliefs could turn to the guy on the stool next to them at the coffee shop counter and spout whatever they believed about black people or women staying home or Hispanics or the weird Orientals or whatever, or the Native Americans that they were trying to keep on the res or whatever their particular diatribe was of the day. And the person sitting next to them on that stool, 99% of the time, totally agreed, and the other 1% shut up or moved. Now, more often than not, they are turning to their right and to their left, saying these things, and are encountering either pushback or silence. And it's affecting them. And you're getting a lot of blowback on that level. So I appreciate the call. I think the real dust up about the Civil War is that and the flag itself is that it is representative. Not in you can debate all you want about the Civil War aspect of it, but in modern politics, it represents a permanent force of racism. That's what it grew to mean. You could arguably say that there are certain members of the German public who looked at the swastika and said, this is our way of nationally getting back to an economic footing. We believe Hitler is the guy to get us back economically out of this hole that the rest of Europe has put us in. And you would be right. There are and were Germans who believed that. But they were in the stark minority to the numbers who bought the line that Jews were responsible and were down with the idea of getting rid of them. And you're talking about the same number of people, on a statistical level, who had those feelings about race and slavery. And they viewed it as their point of economic freedom. And so they were willing to fight to protect that. And I grew up in Kentucky, a divided state. It was Kentucky's whole thing was brother against brother. One of them would fight for the North, one would fight for the South. The House divided. That's what the whole point of that speech was. So regardless of any hyperbole that came, by the way, about the Confederate flag, and this is kind of all that I feel like I need to say about that particular issue, because it is worth talking about, but in a historical and past sense, is that regardless of anyone's feelings about what the basis of the Civil War was and what that flag represented, the fact of the matter is, to both its white supporters and its black detractors, it represents racism. It was a visual weapon to remind people that while the overall war was lost, they feel many of the battles were won. And it stood like a burning cross in front of state houses all across the South. And it's got to go. We'll be back. More of your calls in Katie Speak right after this to talk about some of those facts and benefits and the reasons why electing Democrats actually makes your life better, even if you're a Republican. We'll be back. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Mm-hmm.
We got Katie Speak.
Sorry, folks. Had to go out for a second. Had to feed the cat so he wouldn't meow during the entire show.
We got Katie speak.
Excellent.
Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
You're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at halsparks.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Damn pus-faced little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
Welcome to the show. If you've been listening, we spent the first hour talking Trump and how, in many ways, he is the perfect example of the modern Republican Party. The one area where he probably diverges and where they will find a gap in his armor is, of course, on the religious angle of stuff, the Santorum Huckabee factor. The main part being their anti-choice, the restrictions on the abortion rights of American women and this overriding belief that they are not capable of or cannot be trusted to make decisions regarding their own bodies. Probably going back to that whole Apple thing. Anyways, to help us sort through it and look into possible remedies, we welcome Katie Speak. Katie is joining us. Hi, Katie.
Good morning.
Who has a new article? Yeah, who has a new article on truthout.org. Which I'll retweet as we speak. Why don't you kind of catch us up to speed? There's a this is a bill that's just quite leaving subcommittee. Catch us up on what's going on.
Sure.
Yeah.
So this is particularly fun news for people in Illinois, as Jan Schakowsky is one of the lead sponsors, and Representative Gutierrez has signed on to be one of the 70 co-sponsors in the House. I'm going to speak in what sounds like hyperbole, but I promise that it is not. This is the biggest moment in reproductive rights and justice in a generation. This bill, which has been sort of, unfortunately, a little trans-exclusionarily described as the Each Woman Act. It's the Equal Access to Abortion Coverage and Health Insurance Act. It would nullify existing abortion coverage bans in every state and at the federal level. This is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Since the beginning, since Roe was decided, we have yet to have any what our friend Amani Gandhi calls affirmative right to abortion. There's no affirmative right to abortion in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Roe says that you can't limit it past a certain level, but there's no affirmative right. And this would be the first bill, the first legislation that says a person who lives in this country who has the ability to become pregnant also has the right to end that pregnancy no matter their financial circumstances, no matter where they live, none of that. When the Hyde Amendment was added to the federal budget for the first time in 1996, in order to tell any person who was using Medicaid as their health insurance that they were not able to use their health insurance to end a pregnancy. Representative Hyde, also unfortunately from Illinois, said, "I would certainly like to prevent, if I could legally, anybody from having an abortion, a rich woman, a middle-class woman, or a poor woman. Unfortunately, the only vehicle available is the Medicaid bill." So every single year since 1976, no matter who the president has been, no matter who has controlled Congress, our legislators in Washington have signed this into law again and again every year for 39 years.
Mm-hmm.
The poor have been told, we don't trust you. It's exactly what you said. We don't trust you. And this bill would end that. It would overturn those bills that you and I talked about that were sort of dogs of rape insurance laws, places like Michigan, the 25 states where the Affordable Care Act exchanges are not allowed to offer insurance coverage for abortion. It would overturn the states where they have said to private insurers you're not allowed to cover it. That's it. It'd be over. Federal employees, Native Americans, Peace Corps volunteers, millions of people would immediately have access to a constitutional right. It's huge.
Mm-hmm.
And the best part is, and this is going to be the problem for all those people you were just talking about in the introduction, Americans overwhelmingly support it. 86% of voters agree. 86%. That includes the majority of Republicans.
Right.
That a woman's income level should not affect her ability to access abortion care. This is massive. Abortion access is now mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it probably has been for a while, but we have the polling data to support it. You know, when 62% of Republicans say, as long as abortion is legal, the amount of money a woman has or does not have should not prevent her from being able to have an abortion, we're at a sea change moment. And I hope the Republicans have a better plan for 2016, because if they're hoping to use my uterus to win the election, that battle's gone.
Well, I think they've, to some degree, gathering, have given up on it as, you know, the only way they could care less about your uterus is if it was being used to smuggle Mexicans across the border. Like, that's the only way they would care less about it as a voting block. The reality is, even the statistical proof of this, even the overwhelming, they could get phone calls from every constituency, that they represent. Many of them will still vote against it because, like I said at the top of the show, and the point I was initially trying to make, and I know our last caller at the bottom of the hour, last hour, was saying, we can't just go off on Trump and make the show about that. We've got to talk about details. But it's teeing up, the whole reason I brought it up was it's teeing up that the Republican presidential primary and the candidacy itself is about attention on a national level for sales of some other service or product. It is not about actual legislating. It is not about actual governing. And so the people who are paying for that, who are funding those presidential campaigns to sell those things later, are people like the Koch brothers and organizations like Heritage Foundation and Liberty University. That crowd, that money is largely, rooted in religious fervor. And so it could be 100% the Republican voting bloc could say, you know what, I'm for it, and I'll co-sponsor it as a citizen, and still many of these people, if not all of them, would come out against it just because
they're going to have to use it to fundraise. And I haven't talked to you since the Supreme Court decision season ended. But if your longtime listeners will remember, I made a very bold prediction, I think 2.5 years ago, two years ago, that the filibuster that happened in Texas with Wendy Davis and the unruly mob, that law, when that law made it all the way to the Supreme Court, and I predicted that would happen now.
Yeah.
Decision came down in June of 2016 that we would very likely have a female presidential candidate, with that decision happening after what will be 6 months to almost a year of a Republican presidential primary season of them fundraising
right.
of this.
Yeah.
And it is going to be impossible for them to run away from the anti-women awful bigotry that they're going to have to spout to fundraise, because they're going to have been doing it for like 9 months when that decision comes down in June. And I mean,
the root of the
first debate is in a month. Like, we're around the corner. You can hate Trump all you want, but he's going to be on the dais probably for that first debate.
No question. And I think he'll stay through a big chunk of it. And if he drops out, it will not be for lack of funding. It'll simply be because he gets a bigger job someplace else. It's all about ROI, return on investment. If the return on investment actually circles back and it's biting him too much, then he'll drop out and claim some other nonsense going on. But I see him riding this completely out because this ups his. Honestly, Trump could buy Fox. He could buy Fox eventually. This could be our next Rupert Murdoch if he chose to, if this is a business decision on his point. And it wouldn't be a dumb move for him as a media empire thing. It would work. And that may be the end game for him on this. Can you hold with us through the break? Because I do want to talk to you about the Hillary candidacy and how I think it's going to be. It's almost the perfect serving up of these kind of ideas. It brings it to the surface.
You got it.
Excellent. Okay, we'll be back with more. Katie speaking. Your call is 773-763-9278. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT Radio.
She's a lady. Oh, she's a lady. Talking about that little lady. And the lady is mine.
I think we'll do today we'll do a hangout afterwards. But I will shut this show down and start a whole new hangout and just take regular questions and that kind of stuff and kind of veer off chat room, just so you know. William in the chat room telling Ginger to emulate the good in both Jesus and Paul and throw away the bad. Excuse me for heresy. That's heresy. It's either the holy word or it's not. Every single syllable. The untouched and perfect word of God. So that's why, whether you're gay or just a woman, or you were held as slave by Pharaoh and you weren't an Israelite, or whether you just had a shrimp cocktail at one point, you just deserve to be wiped out. It's beginning, if you read the Bible and the books of the Bible that will be written after Armageddon happens, because I'm sure the flood was supposed to be a form of Armageddon. If you do that, then you realize that we're like pests that God has been trying to spray out of existence. Like, he's tried everything. It's like the Abrahamic God is at a hardware store right now going, I've tried water, I've tried disease.
This is Tom Hartman, and you're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
Welcome back to the show. Still with us, Katie Speak. You and I have been watching this play out on so many fronts, and I made this point initially, was that once the Republican Party recognized that they were not going to win national office anymore, they became about redistricting and running true believers and zealots for House and state jobs, knowing that the House at this point is simply there to run interference for the state houses that are doing things that are both unconstitutional or unpopular on a national level. That's it. That, just to overturn stuff the president would do, or to stop stuff from the state house from reaching the Supreme Court. That's essentially it. Through 9th District, 9th Circuit Court judge, that kind of stuff. So, now we see, though, this biting them in the backside in terms of how popular women having the right to make their own decisions actually is on a national level. And the Republicans are not only have been running against this, but will be running against this all into 2016. And I think it largely has to do with, we have our first fully viable female presidential candidate in Hillary Clinton, a far and away front runner, for lack of a better phrase, trumping all the other candidates right out of the box. The only one with enough name recognition to give her a run for her money is Jeb Bush, ironically enough. And the expectation that he'll actually win is nearly as foolish as Trump thinking he has a real shot.
Well, and even with Jeb, he comes from a family with a very mixed background on women's rights. It's not like, Bush Jr. sort of, was sort of forced into the role of religious fervor and all the things that went with it, but he never really, his rhetoric wasn't anti-woman, right? That wasn't really
no, but it didn't have to be. It didn't have to be. That's what I mean. Yeah.
It's interesting because Daddy Bush actually sat on the board of Planned Parenthood. He wasn't anti-choice until he had to become Reagan's vice president. So we don't that's not the same kind of anti-choice pedigree you have in a Santorum or someone else. Right. So he's not even, that should, it's weird, that should make him rather unpopular with the early primary funders.
Yeah, well, but they still, the strength of the Bush legacy, if there is any, was run entirely on the idea that, they may not, they're definitely on the team from a religious standpoint. And they don't have to talk about it. Their bona fides are played out. George W. did enough damage to the Muslims to guarantee that he's the Jesus lover for us, regardless of what his policies or his actual actions were. That's enough for us. You know what I mean? So I don't think they have to do it. I think they feel like they don't have to sell that anymore. Can they win on the other issues anymore? Is there enough of, obviously the economic aspect of a Bush presidency is an absurdity at this point. But the question is, and this ties into it, women's rights and the right to, especially to healthcare, more so, I think, birth control itself, ultimately, than access to abortion. You know, Republicans often like to tie together. Affects the economic choices that a woman can make. This has been my argument for why, you know, whenever a Republican or a conservative complains, or a religious zealot complains about gay pride parades, they always, you know, freak out about gay pride parades. I said, my response has always been, look, you don't want to see gay pride parades anymore? Okay, guarantee that they have the right to the same rights as you. Then it's done. You're fine. They won't need one. They only need one when they're being put down. And if you want to guarantee that you know, women are not making abortion choices for economic reasons or for lifestyle reasons, then make sure they make the same as a man. Start there. Start at pay equality.
With
right.
How about comprehensive sex ed? Which by the way, that is
okay. Now you're talking
popular.
crazy.
Yeah, that's also popular, all the way down to even something % of evangelicals would prefer that our schools have comprehensive sex ed. That's another unfortunate statistic for Republicans. But there's a new the end of a study happening in Colorado for exactly what you said. You know, providing access to birth control is actually a Republican issue. It's President Nixon's the one who signed Title X to give access to low-income women to contraception, and he's I'm going to get his quote wrong because I don't have it in front of me. It's my last RH Reality Check piece where I talk about how my access to food assistance and my access to contraception and my access to abortion care are all tied together. And this is reproductive justice is it's really very much that simple. But in Colorado, they put together this huge program to provide young women and low-income women with contraception, and not just contraception. They gave them the option of long-acting reversible contraception. So like the IUD that I was in my doctor's office getting the very first day of 2013 when it was covered without a copay. And the unintended pregnancy rate in Colorado has dropped like something like 40%, along with the abortion rate. Now, we're always going to need access to abortion. That's always going to be a thing that's part of comprehensive medical care. But if Republicans really cared about doing things like reducing unintended pregnancies and reducing all of that, then this would be the way to go. Free contraception is the way to go. And the Affordable Care Act has gone a long way towards that, but it hasn't completely solved it. And so, like, this should be the thing that saves, that makes us all come together to fix it. And by the way, it's economic for the American people. For every $1 you put into a Medicaid or other program in order to provide contraception and prevent unintended pregnancies, it saves $5.85, almost a 6-to-1 return.
Right.
This should be a no-brainer for Republicans, but they've got to have that ideological thing like hanging around.
Yeah, well, they again, because of who's writing the checks, because of the people who are writing the checks to their campaigns, not necessarily who the grassroots supporters are anymore. And that's I think the sea change we're looking into. And you'll probably know this better than I, but there was an article that just came out about the effect that the Affordable Care Act has had overall on women's, just how much women have saved, like $250 million, somewhere along those lines, in the last year, because birth control is provided.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah, via because of the Affordable Care Act. Yeah.
Mine has saved something like that, because when I couldn't afford to shell out $1,000 up front for an IUD, even though that would have saved me long term.
Yeah.
It's sort of like the long-acting birth control is a lot like driving. It's like a decision between fixing your old car and knowing that will be actually more expensive in the long run, but not having the money to front for a new car that would save money in the long term.
Right.
So an IUD that used to cost $800 to $1,000 but lasted 5 years, it's huge money saver. But I never had the grand to toss in. So my birth control at the time of my unplanned pregnancy was like $80 a month. Even though I had insurance that I paid for, they were allowed to deny coverage to that. So I mean, I mean that was costing me over $1,000 a year over 5 years. It's $5,000 plus the copay it cost me to go to the doctor to get it. Just my IUD by itself has saved me something like $5,200.
Right.
That's huge.
Yeah.
I'm a low-income woman. Do you know what happens when you save a low-income person $5,000? That immediately goes back into the community, which is an additional economic boost to everyone.
Right. Well, and we're talking about the difference between, in some cases, an education, and I think that's the key here, because you talk about how much it costs to go to community college, and making a choice between making sure that you don't have a baby that you're not ready for or you don't want, while you're getting an education. That money overlaps incredibly. And the fact that that decision has to be made in a first world country is ridiculous to start with, much less the United States. But I think it's becoming increasingly clear. To me, that's the turning point. Because literally, community college costs about $5,000 a year. You know, around those, like between 2 and 5, depending on what you're going for. And obviously you can go up into university and starts costing more. But that baseline of like getting out of poverty, getting to the point where you can do it, that's been a ladder that's been pulled up behind people for so long. You know, women of privilege have been ice skating uphill to get, you know, the same as their male colleagues in an executive level for a long time. But it is you know, and it's comparable to the struggle, but it is no way in line with the struggle of getting out of poverty. And this direct tie, and I think that might be why a lot of it is very popular. But I appreciate your piece, by the way. We're up against the break. I can't thank you enough for being on with us today. I tweeted out the link to the story. I recommend everybody read it. And I think you're right. I think we are at a turning point. Really appreciate it.
I hope so, man, from your lips.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Al.
It's a matter of time. This is the tide is going your way. Thank you so much for joining us. Hey, talk to you soon. We'll be back right after this. More of the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. And we're going to end with happy ending. We're going to have a happy ending today because it's just constantly getting, you know, this as harsh as it is, news cycle-wise, there's a lot of good news out there.
We got 2 calls.
Cool.
Yeah. Coming back.
Cool.
This is Tom Hartman, and you're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
Welcome back to the show. 773-763-9278 is our number. Let's take some calls. Who do we have, Dennis?
Let's go to John in Chicago.
Let's go to John in Chicago. Hey, John, welcome.
Hi, Hal. Hi. First, very quickly, I love you. You are fantastic.
Thanks.
Semi-long-time listener, first-time caller.
Excellent.
Where's Folk? Oh, I miss you. So here's my question. Donald Trump, back when he sort of ran before, ran on an entirely different platform. And now he's running on what he's running on, which is insane, but I digress. Point is, I feel like these people, most of the candidates, are taking this as a joke. And I'm wondering who's actually in it to actually be president and who's in it to just say that they ran. And that includes, I do believe, that includes Mr. Trump, because I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Here's what I think. I think Jeb Bush initially started toying with the idea because the field was so weak that that it was full of also-rans, including Mike Huckabee and others, that he was like, I think there might be a chance because he's known as the smart Bush of the two brothers, which is not saying a whole lot, that he was like, I might actually get a chance at being the nominee. I don't think he thought he could win against Hillary. I still don't think he does, legitimately, nor does anyone in his family. But I do think that he took it with a mild level of seriousness, and knowing that if he ran and lost, he could blame his brother. He could literally just, he could say, well, the legacy, was rough for people to take, or he'll soften the language, but that's what it'll be about. The reality is, I think when Trump ran before, it was for attention, just like it is this time. But I think he was, the chances of him actually getting to the front were much smaller. Now they're very great because the field is so bad. The field has been experienced as so bad. People have seen these same people already. They've already been vetted and been through the process. There's no outliers and shockers coming in this crowd. There might be somebody who enters later, but it's not going to do any good. And Rubio's not, the Latino Obama, if you want to, look at it from that point of view. He's not coming from the outside and surprising his party because they won't vote for someone. They won't vote for a Latino. They're not going to do it. It's just like Sarah Palin, 70% likability rating, 20% electability rating. The very people who said they loved her wouldn't vote for her because she's a woman. The same thing goes for Marco Rubio. He's going to be very popular, but those very same people, their own racist nature is going to keep them from voting. So here's what I think, and I think you're right about this. I think Trump is running for the accidental win as far as the primary. I don't think I think he expects to win everything he's involved in, and he loses a good deal of the time, but it doesn't bother him. I think Jeb Bush is hoping that he can win, which is not how you win a presidency. You know what I mean? It's something that big. There's a level of intent that you or the people behind you have to have that is so ferocious that it is almost overwhelming to everyone around you. And Hillary has it. Obama had it. It's just how it goes. I don't think any of these folks are serious. I think if anything, if there's going to be a real challenge to Hillary Clinton, it might come as a third party Ross Perot-ish type of character who comes on the scene. But I think you're right. I think they're running for attention, book sales. I mean, look at Trump. He's branding. He's not running for president. He's branding.
What? I wish there was a reverse of the word branding, because I feel like what he's actually done, he set out to brand Trump yet again, but I'll just call it unbranding, because he's losing.
Well, he lost
thousands, millions of dollars, because he just is
Yeah.
Yahoo.
Well, you're absolutely right. But again, like I said, he may end up. This may be his kind of end run where I'll buy Fox. We'll do that instead. This is our new business venture. It's not going to affect any of his real estate holdings at all. It's mostly his promotional stuff that's gone the other way. So he's giving up the Miss Universe or what have you, and he's giving up the flailing ratings of The Apprentice for another external branding thing, which is be the face of Fox for a while. As far as reaching people who will buy the book, all the Apprentice watchers have bought the book already. It's that kind of these that he's going to make about this. This is an actuarial decision. So I honestly think this is just every so often you got to shake the bucket and see if you can rearrange the parts and make something new out of these same Legos, and that's kind of what he's doing. The real question will be, who will they pair Jeb Bush with that'll have a mild aha moment that might give cover and safety to all the people who like the fiery rhetoric of Trump, religious ferocity of Huckabee and Santorum, and in many ways like giving McCain an attractive woman to counter his aging old man. They will give some sort of social conservative cover for him. That's it. That's the only thing to look for in this entire party. The other part is a ferocious push for Hillary, or and support for Bernie Sanders and support for O'Malley and others. As far as outside voices. And I really do think my gut across the board tells me that Hillary is going to be the one, and she's actually going to win this time. I think she'll be great for the country. I have no issues with that whatsoever. Because I'm a Democrat, I don't look for leadership in the grand sense. I look for somebody who wants to run the country well. Because the problem with leader, when we really fervently get behind that, it's a little too nationalistic and militaristic for me. This is an experiment where the people lead through their voice, and that person enacts the leadership of the people. And so, if you're talking about like similar, and I appreciate the call too, by the way. I don't know if you're still there, if Dennis.
No, I dropped him in.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just wanted to thank him for calling. But if you look at what Katie was talking about the support for the bill for an affirmative right to abortion, that women should have that choice affirmatively, the vast majority of people are actually for it. That's the leadership of the people playing out in a positive sense. And it should be up to our representatives to carry that forward. Obviously, the reason why we have the Supreme Court, the reason why we have the legislative process that we do, is to protect minorities from the tyranny of the majority in an instance where their rights would be trumped, no pun intended, it would be overwhelmed by the rights of the majority. The ironic part is that the only conversation we're having about that these days is Christians and Southern racists saying that their right to be bigoted is being infringed by gay people getting the right to marry and women getting the right to abortion. That somehow that limits their right to talk about it, which is not the case. If you are a Christian and you are against gay marriage, you're allowed to talk about it in your church and sell that meme all you want. You're not getting arrested for it. And even though your church, if you're offering up voting recommendations, even if your church is getting, it's not going to get its tax exempt status revoked. It's not. It should, but it's not. You're getting more leeway than you're legally allowed. So this idea that somehow, by not being guaranteed business, and the whole, I shouldn't have to bake wedding cakes for gay couples if I'm a bakery sorry, you're an actual company that pays taxes with everybody else. If you're a nonprofit, if you want to be a nonprofit religious cake baking thing where you don't make a profit, knock yourself out. Guess what? Religious protections galore. But you allow people to not bake cakes for Christians, for gays because they're Christian. You can talk about a slippery slope to gays and gays first, then Muslims and non-Christians of all sorts, and and then Jews. That's it. I mean, effectively, that's where you're going. You're going, I'm a Christian. I think the Jews killed Christ. Then I'm not going to bake a cake for a Jewish wedding. That's it. You can't. If there's a non-discrimination clause in the government and it's equal protection, it's equal protection. Suck it up. Find the charity of your religion, hold your judgment like your teacher says, and do an even better job. And maybe you can convince them through this flood of love that their sinful life is something they should turn away from. Because I got news for you. As a Christian, that's the only tool in your toolbox, according to Christ, is overwhelming love. And if you're not capable of that, then don't be in the love business. Don't be baking cakes for a wedding because you know nothing about love. We'll be back with the happy ending. I think one more call. Dennis, do we have one more call?
We got 2.
Okay, we'll take those right after we get back, and then we'll do the happy ending. Awesome.
Cool.
We'll be back. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
That we should walk alone on the streets at night, checking the tide, walking that very fine line. The humor is black.
Welcome back to the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. It's now time for the happy ending.
Welcome back to the show. Let's take 2 more calls, and then we'll get to our happy ending because we got some good news to talk about. Who do we have, Dennis?
Let's do Paul in Seattle.
Cool. Hey, Seattle this weekend. I'm coming to Parlor Live next weekend.
Next weekend.
Yeah, it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I think. I'm doing shows all weekend there. It'll be great. I love Seattle. So fire away.
Great place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll be glad to have you, Hal.
Thanks.
I don't know why we're talking about Donald Trump. I first heard of Donald Trump, I think it was back in the late 80s. I had a girlfriend in college who really thought he was great, and I just thought he was an idiot.
Uh-huh.
And my opinion of him has gone only down since then. That was the Marla Maples era.
Sure.
And since then, my opinion of him has only steadily gone down.
Yeah.
And I got to ask this guy, all we talk about this week is Donald Trump, and I got to tell you something. Other than Jeb Bush, Bernie Sanders has a better chance of being president than the rest of the entire Republican field.
Right.
Jeb Bush has virtually no chance of beating Hillary Clinton.
I agree.
So the only compelling question is, would Jeb Bush have a chance of beating Bernie Sanders? I don't think he does. I think he'd lose to Bernie Sanders.
That's an excellent point.
So, this is, I really think it would be a close race. I think it would be very, very close between Jeb Bush and Bernie Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
So, barring anything surprising, and we probably are going to get the election of the two dynasties. We're going to get Clinton Bush again.
Right.
It's going to be Hillary Clinton, and Donald Trump is just he's just every day. It's in his speech last night in Los Angeles. He just more of the same. Just really is.
I agree, but he is neck and neck with Jeb. That's the. They are literally there's a new. This was put up 7 a.m. this morning. Posted 7 a.m. this morning. New poll shows Donald Trump, Jeb Bush in dead heat. And
But Hal.
Yeah.
But what that indicates is how weak Jeb Bush is,
and the entire
That's what that
GOP,
really means.
and the entire
Exactly.
Yeah, I totally. That's the amazing, and that's kind of the point I'm making anymore. Is on a national level, what the Republican Party is all about at this point is effectively a Fox News broadcast. There is nothing, because here's the thing. You wouldn't hire a babysitter who tells you she hates children. Why the hell would you elect someone who hates government? Like, if you think, like, even from the Reagan era, like I'm from the government and I'm here to help you is the worst thing you could ever hear. Well, then why are you in the government? Go stay in private industry and prove me wrong. I'm sure Donald Trump's done a decent amount of charity stuff as tax write-offs left and right, but the reality is, where was he during FEMA with this whole, I'll show you how private industry can do it? Non-existent. He can't look back on that stuff, and neither can the Bush family. The reality is, the reason this is news and why this is a big part is because the Bush legacy, two presidents in the same family. Father was ambassador to China, head of the CIA, and vice president. Son was president during the worst terrorist attack on the country. The third Bush is running and is neck and neck with a blowhard with a reality show, with the worst hair since Welcome Back Kotter. That's what's amazing. That's why it's news, and why, in many ways, it is indicative of the ideology that's going on in the Republican Party right now, what they really amount to. So I appreciate the call. Thank you for calling in. Let's grab one more call, and then I'll do the happy ending.
Steve in the Gold Coast.
Cool. Oh, right on. Hey, Steve. Welcome.
Hello. Yes. I think you did hit it by and large on the head with regard to the Republicans knowing that they're disintegrating in terms of being able to win elections on a national level. Now, keeping in mind, if we concede the point that they can't win the White House again, and that presidents nominate Supreme Court justices, then all of the gains that they can make in states that eventually, come to be before the court, the Supreme Court, given a single other nomination by a new Democratic president, which would shift that court significantly.
Yep.
That means even in that long-term game, shall we say, they lose out, because sooner or later, without a Republican president, you can't restock the court, as George Bush did.
Right. Well, the idea is that they've gotten it on a balance. This is their theory. The problem is they're ice skating up a hill against this, is that they're operating on the theory that they did that the Roberts, Alito,
right, that they're
going to be there.
Yeah, that they're young enough that they're going to be there long enough. Now, if again among those who were perhaps destined to retire, as long as the Democrats can keep stocking the court with people who are like-minded, and then you get just one flip, and down the road, so that you can get someone who's firmly in the camp of what I would argue are the interests of most people in this country. They begin to lose that ground again because North Carolina can decide anything it wants, or Texas anything it wants with regard to reproductive rights. Once that gets to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court says
it's going to fall apart.
No, you can't do that. It falls apart.
Right, and that's where the affirmative right to abortion and reproductive health care is imperative going forward. That the ambiguity of Roe v. Wade has actually led to a lot of this tumult for a long time, and that women's reproductive rights are actually going to go the way of Confederate flag in many ways. That this battle was fought and won a long time ago, and there are a lot of people who either didn't get the news and are hanging out in the woods like a Japanese soldier who didn't know World War II was over, or have been so busy reenacting the battles that they did win that they actually think it's real. So appreciate the call. Let's do the happy ending.
I am happy, you are happy, let us be happy together. Whether the weather is cloudy or sunny, I will always be your funny honey bunny. I am lucky, you are lucky, let us get lucky together. Whether the weather is cloudy or breezy, I'll be there to say, hey, come on, let's take it easy. 'Cause isn't it nice to have the friends that you do? And isn't it nice that the sky is so blue? And isn't it nice to say I love you, chugga chugga choo choo, woo woo.
All right, so one of the big ones this week, and we touched on it earlier, is the Confederate flag coming down in front of the courthouse or the state house in South Carolina. This is kind of one of those future moments where you look back and you go, a tide actually changed, and we became the country we're supposed to be. There are so many elements. Moments in history that we ignored now. We look back as kind of absurd. And one of the reasons why we look back at them as absurd and kind of indicative of the intellectual weakness and the naivete of what we were as a people generations ago is because they are gone. Because we are looking at them. We look at things like, the knives used by Aztecs to sacrifice people to open a new temple, or we look at Bible verses calling for the sacrifice of children as sort of indicative of, well, that was the old way, and the New Testament, the new ways of being, wipe those ways out. We recognize that is not the way to be. And one of the reasons why we recognize that is not the way to be is because we don't have emblems of those things, those existences, still all over the place. You have to go look them up in a book. You have to go visit them in a museum. These indicative elements of, if somehow the Catholic Church chose to put in front of its churches all the tools used by the Inquisition to torture people into confessing their sinfulness before dying, it would really harm the image and the message and the mission of the church. And the only way that religion can follow the teachings of its patriarch, of Christ, as an emblem, as a man, and as a teacher, is by eliminating those points where they really went off the rails. And so the elimination of the Confederate flag and putting it in a drawer or behind a piece of glass to go look at is a huge step forward for this country. And it's one of those things that you find yourself on the right side of history. You find yourself looking back on it and going, remember, this used to be in front of courthouses for 150 years after the war was lost. It's important. It's huge. And it will make it so easy compared to how it's been for us to move forward. Go tell somebody. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thank you, Katie Speak, for joining us. Thank you, Dennis. You're awesome. We'll be back next week. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Okay. Thanks, Dennis. Are you with us next week? Are you transitioning out? Are you training somebody? What's happening? You gonna we can talk about it this week? Oh, man. To the other show. Yeah, I think so. Anyways, Dennis, you're awesome. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Cool. So, everybody in the chat room, I'm going to sign off, and then I'm going to do a Q&A directly. Yeah, let me do that. So I'm going to sign off on this one. I will tweet a link if you want to join us back in for a just kind of a standardized Q&A. It can be political, but it can also just be whatever, entertainment related, shall we say. So I'll see you guys in just a few. Thank you guys for joining us. Those of you who are just here for the politics and stuff, I agree. We'll see you next week, and enjoy. Cheers.